You know, it's very, very interesting because most of us try and make gut feel decisions. Most of us make mistakes in terms of where the rand is going. We had a guy last year about March time that actually invested and then pulled out because his banker told him that the rand, and I remember the rand was 8.88 in March, and his banker told him that it will be 8 rand to the dollar by the end of the year. I phoned him at the end of the year and I said, how'd that go for you? So what I'd like to do, and I actually see we've lost the board here, I'd like to start off quickly with James, because James has a very clinical, accurate way of looking at the rand in terms of where the rand is and how one actually calculates the future of the rand. And James, if you can just help me, why do most people take their money out when it's 20 rand to the pound and bring it back into South Africa when it's 11 rand to the pound and not get it the other way around? So could you just explain to me in terms of how you get an accuracy of more than 80% since 2005 in terms of helping people make the right decisions as to where to invest in terms of, and the timing of that investment?
Okay, so what moves the rand? Fundamentals. Sentiment.
Stocks.
Okay, there's a lot of things that move the rand. If we look at the rand here, I mean, we can keep going a lot about this. It comes down to there's social events, political events, financial events, economic events. There's lots of things that affect the rand. There's actually millions of news events, financial data, everything that can affect the rand. And the old way of analyzing that is the fundamental analyst. And what he does is, and he's the guy you hear on the radio or read his articles that come through in the morning, come from Andrew and the guys. And he looks at all of this stuff and he decides what's going to happen to the rand. So this is a fundamental analyst over here. And he says, no, this is about to happen, and if this happens, we should see the rand strengthen. And he feels comfortable about that because he believes he's looked at the whole picture, and you feel comfortable about it because he's an expert. But generally what happens is he's focusing on maybe 4 main fundamentals, 4 main factors. But he's not taking everything else into account. And so what happens is next week he says, the rand didn't move the way we said it was going to. The market's overreacted. The market's wrong. But actually he's wrong. And that's the first problem we have with this old way of looking at the market. But then there's another problem. And that's what we call the cloud of traders. Because these are the guys that actually trade. And there are millions of them. So there's you guys here investing in property. You might have businesses, import, export. You've got persons that are just sending their money offshore or bringing it back. You've got hedge funds, banks, governments, old grannies trading the rand. There's millions of these guys that are all trading the rand. And you know how big this market is. Anyone guess here how much is traded against the rand every day? Someone guess? In dollars. Last year was $16.6 billion. Every day. And that, to give you an idea of the forex market, that is 0.3% of the global turnover. So it's small, but it's still huge for our market. Now the fact of the matter is, these are the guys that move the market. So they look at these factors and they make a decision: are we going to buy? Am I going to sell? Or do I sit and do nothing? Like most of us did when Dolph was up here with his $100 bill. And if more people are buyers, so up here, the market goes up. If more people are sellers, the market goes down. Simple. But what we find is most persons are focusing on this. What is happening? Let me find out what's happening in the market. But this doesn't move the market. It's these guys. So all this information has been filtered through these guys here. And it's what they decide to do based on what they're looking at that moves the market. So when this guy here says he knows everything that is affecting the rand, he's not only saying that, he's saying he knows everything, and he knows what all these millions of people are planning to do based on that information, which is impossible. And so that's the second problem. So this guy effectively here, he's in control of all of that as well. Okay? But as I said earlier, that all this information is filtered through this cloud of traders. And the most profound thing is, once they find it out, you get to a point which is price. So today we're sitting at around about 10.45 or so. It's not really 10.45, it's 10.45, call it 28. To 4 decimal places. An exact figure. And that's profound. When I realized it, that you could take all this information, and once you filtered it through all these traders, you get a precise figure. And what affects you is not what this guy says, but what this price says. And so realize we have to just draw a line here. And this is reality. This is uncertainty, chaos. And you can concentrate on there, you can listen to these guys, or else you can look at what price is doing. What price is doing. Won't you just give us some water here? Put this down here. Sorry. But then if you look at price, and we've all looked at charts, we get all this information filtering through here, and we get a price in this minute. Next minute or next hour, we're getting a price, another price, another price, another price, another price, based on the changes of what's happening here and what these people have decided to do. And then we get our price patterns. And this is the same in any market. And these patterns, most of us, when we look at that pattern, we look at it and we say it's a pattern of financial patterns. But it's not. It's a pattern of all this data filtered through this cloud of traders and what they've decided to do. And how do we generally make decisions? Emotionally. If we're feeling good about something, we'll buy. If we're feeling rotten, we'll sell. And we tend to do that same thing over and over and over again. And because of that, these emotional patterns recur over and over and over again. If you look back 600 years, it's actually happened. Chinese graph of rice market back 600 years ago, when they plotted it on a graph, you had these same patterns, price patterns. And effectively, that's where we come in here, is that we take historical patterns and we've analyzed them, catalogued them, and if we're at this point here in the current market, we can look back and say, what did most people do? Effectively, what we're saying, what did most people do in this situation? And we can say with some certain level of comfort that the market is likely to head in the same pattern. So you can either look at all of this, or else you can look at, and so the forecasts based on what the market has done historically. And so that's the basis of our.
No, fantastic. I mean, look, guys, I think the most important thing is that James, I always joke with James, but, when I get in my car and I drive from here to Joburg, I don't really care how the engine works. Like, all I want to know is how my car works. When he drew this picture for me in Durban or Cape Town, I finally we've been doing this for 3-4 years together, and I finally actually understood what he actually is talking about. But Joe, in simple terms, he talks about the weather, and like how the weatherman gets stuff right and following patterns and pretty much doing exactly what he's doing. For those of you left brain, chapter 2, the entire chapter was written by James. So if you want to know everything he's talking about, it's in chapter 2 of the book, Property Going Global. And he also very kindly handed out flyers to everyone that I think has even the latest updated research. And lastly, James, just quickly, if someone wants to know where the Rand's going, because last year, this time, you said with a 90% accuracy we'll go over 10 Rand to the dollar, and we were at 8.88. You're showing us there that we're going somewhere between 14 and 21 in the next couple of years. We're not really interested tomorrow morning or next week, because as property investors, we should be looking at least 5 years. But roughly, in a nutshell, what would you say we're looking at? Where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, well, you've got a updated chart of this. I should have a pointer, I suppose.
I'll do it for you.
So this is a historical chart, our long-term outlook. Since then, we've seen the Rand go up to about 11.40 or so, and now we're back testing this area, this trend line here from these two highs. Okay, I think that in your booklets there's now a 70% chance that we'll have a bounce off that trend line. We could actually have a bit of a correction, it's just trending, not trending, but moving sideways for the next few months. But we're heading up into this area again, 14 to 21. 30% chance that if we break below here, we'll go down to 8 or so. But overall, the long-term picture is bleak. Not only fundamentally, but in terms of sentiment as well.
Okay, so can I just ask you a question, which was the question I asked you? Gut feel, one number, I won't hold you to it, but 3 years from now, what are we sitting at to the US dollar?
Three years from now.
3 years from now, yeah.
12.50.
12.50. Guys, round of applause quickly for James. I do think, obviously, we got a lot of people up here, and James, thank you very much for sharing. If we get rid of this whiteboard here, because people can still ask questions, I'm just conscious of the time. Andrew, from your perspective, James has just told us it's going to be 12.50. So whether we think with an 30% probability that it might get as good as 8, or to be honest, there's probably a better chance it's going to go with a 70% probability closer to 12. What do I do? Andrew is a colleague of ours. Brendan mentioned it to him. We do have the global real estate marketplace, and we've exclusively partnered with Sable. And Sable's a big company. They've got all their legislation and everything based out of the UK. They've got a big office down in Cape Town. But if you do want to move money, tell me just 3 things quickly. How do I register? How do I get my tax clearance? And how can you guys help me get my money overseas for, better than the banks, basically?
Thanks for the question, Scott. Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that's quite a few answers I've got to come up with. Firstly, with the rand heading towards 12, as you probably all know, South Africans can take up to R1 million a year under what's known as a discretionary investment allowance, and that's without a tax clearance certificate from SARS. And what we've noticed in the last year, since James's prediction a year ago, a lot of the properties that RJ was selling when the rand was sitting at 7, 8 to $1, is people were being able to buy properties for less than R1 million. So what we've found now is that almost every property is now over R1 million, and so that just adds another complication to the process. So what we've done is the Reserve Bank is a very restrictive force in the economy and for people to move money in and out of South Africa. And what we've done is we've specialized in trying to simplify it. And it's still not that simple, but it is going to be easier working through the likes of us and walking into a high street bank and trying to do it. So what we need to do in order to, let's say, for instance, you buy a property for $120,000, that's for round figures 1.2 million rand. You register with us, it's one form. That covers all the mandates. You're authorizing us to buy foreign exchange on your behalf. We open an account in your name, and we do all the transaction, we do all the Reserve Bank paperwork, etc. for you. With that application, we also need your FICA documentation, so a certified copy of ID and a proof of residence. Once we have your cleared funds, which are sitting in your call account, which we open up on our banking platform for you, we call you up and we say, this is the rate we can give you. Now, when you're driving in the morning and you hear that it's 10.28, or it might be sitting at, I think, 10.46 at the moment to $1, you're never going to buy it at that rate. That is the interbank trading rate. And the other thing that what happens in South Africa, because of the volatility, and James sort of alluded to it, there's an enormous amount of speculative offshore money that flows in and out of our financial markets, which has a massive daily effect. In fact, it works within seconds. You can see the market moving because there are funds flowing in and out driven by all that emotion. And what happens is that the banks quote very wide margins because what they're doing is they're holding stock of dollars, and when they price to you, they've got a price and they've got really badly valued stock today because they might have overpaid for the dollars that they're holding, and they're going to try and offload that to you. How we work is we buy real time, so on demand. When you need to buy your currency, we phone you up and we've got a buy price and we quote you a price that you can buy it from us. How we make our money is we take a margin between what we're buying it from the liquidity providers and what we sell it to you for. No other hidden costs. If you go through a typical high street bank, they'll take a wider spread, they'll make more money on the margin than we do. They'll charge you a commission, which can be up to 1.5%, and then they'll also charge you fees as well. So, Scott, I hope that answers your question.
Not very much so. And I think, again, guys, if you're anything like me, if you don't take action now and it involves doing things like admin, the chances of doing it in another 6 months is probably going to take place. So Andrew's here, he's got the forms. You want to sit down, you want to ask him questions. They've got a table at the back there. Come and take the forms, fill them in. It doesn't cost you anything, and you've got the ability to move it. I will say one thing, though, to their credit, and I'm sure you can understand, a lot of people think that buying a property is just buying the property. That's only 20%, at best 30%. The management, the maintenance, and all that is the other 30%. The tax, the compliance, the accounting, and moving money, that's the other 30%. Our role here is to bring a team of people that we've used for many, many years. Over 10 years now, IPS has been in existence, having helped over 2,000 people invest internationally. And through trial and error, you learn some of the good and some of the bad. But the one thing I will say with Andrew is that he moves all my own personal money, he moves all our company money, he moves any client that really wants to have a recommendations money. And yes, in business, things go wrong. But I personally believe that you are judged as a businessman or a business lady based on how you react when things go badly. And they've never let us down once. So, I think I can't say too much more for that in terms of moving currency. And I think, the one thing he would say as well, which he didn't mention, is that it takes 4 days to transfer a house in America. So when RJ says the date is date, he does not care about excuses with exchange control and, the Reserve Bank and that type of thing. And Andrew knows how to jump through hoops much quicker than one of the bank tellers at Standard Bank, just as an example. Right, we've got a good question here, Dolph. I think you'd probably be the best one for this. And it's quite a long question, so I'm going to cut it down. It was from Alpheus. Basically, Alpheus has a piece of land. He's paying about 500 Rand a month for services. He was going to develop 2 houses, but unfortunately, the market is not right for it at the moment. He said to me, what can I do in terms of making money out of them, in terms of partnering, etc., etc. So I don't know, from your perspective, if you understand, just 2 pieces of land here in Joburg, and he wants to know what he should do with it.
Fence it and graze horses on it, charge for that. Put a security fence around it and store trucks on it at night. Land of itself is not a great investment. You speculate with land unless you want to develop it. And now you're no longer a property investor, you're a developer with all the vagaries of developing. And developers, you've seen the pattern. They develop something, make a roaring profit. They want to do it again. They're going to do it bigger. And a bigger profit. They're going to do it again, and they're going to make the mother of all profits, and then everything turns against them. It's not as if interest rates treble or values halve. It's interest rates go up by 2%, demand falls off a little bit, the currency goes a bit against them, and all those things add up and conspire to make it not a good investment. Plus, when you develop, your minimum cost is your cost of the land and the cost of all the materials to build on it and the cost of labor to assemble those materials on the land to end up with a building, right? Whereas when you buy in the second-hand market, you might buy it at half the developed cost, or a third, depending on the market. So I just can't understand this rationale. I know you've got the land already. Get rid of it and do something, invest in something. That would be my advice.
Just my interest is mid-Val on the Val. I'm from Durban.
It's area.
Is it near the Val?
Yeah.
No, okay. I was going to say, Knysna, they make a hell of a lot of money storing people's boats. So I don't know, I'm just going to make that up based on what you said.
Some kind of storage, but usually to store stuff you need a structure like those parking garages we saw or something.
So RJ, this question's for you. And Samantha said she's very, very interested in what you've spoken about, but she battles to manage her own properties here in Johannesburg. How is it possible that she's going to be able to look after something on the other side of the planet?
Well, you don't have to. That's what we're here for. We're the ones that take care of that. I mean, that's the short version. You don't have to do it. You have a quality manager over there and you're all set. I can't explain to you what to do in your market here except to seek out a professional. I don't know what else to tell you about that.
May I add to that? I mean, it's a great answer, but in addition to that, even if you could manage it yourself, what are you thinking? If you have one property and you manage it yourself, it's going to take, 3 hours a week? So on that basis, if you've got 10 properties, it takes 30 hours a week, and 15, it takes 45 a week. You're going to spend 45 hours a week managing your properties. When are you going to find new ones to buy? If you can't invest in properties where you pay a fair management fee to have them managed for you and let them do that silly work and you find the next property, then you're not an investor. You're a property manager of your own portfolio. You're not an entrepreneur. You've created a job for yourself. And remember, job is an acronym for just over broke. Get a manager in.
That actually was a perfect answer. No, it really was the perfect answer because at one point in my life I had a lot of houses, but I really had a job, and I didn't realize that until many years later. I don't have a job anymore. I'm an investor. There's a management company that takes care of all my stuff because I don't own that management company. I stay far enough away, but I micromanage it just enough to make sure that the services that are being offered are being delivered.
A follow-up question there, and Dolph, sorry, RJ, this question was for you, but Dolph will probably answer it better than you can. But how does the communication work? You showed that the report after 3 months back, but what can people expect in terms of the type of communication they can get in terms of their property and what's happening on the ground?
In every business it evolves. You get better or you get worse, one or the other. We choose to always get better. And a year or two ago, we had a difficulty with communication from the main property manager, which would be Anthony, only because he was overwhelmed and we were scaling up to take on many more properties. So we've added portfolio managers for separate territories. It's made Anthony's life free up quite a bit better, so his communication back and forth with the owners when there needs to be communication has improved significantly. In the meantime, we do quarterly distributions, as Scott just alluded to, and we have 3 full-time bookkeepers that handle your accounts. Elsa is the main contact person who deals with all the investors, and emails go back and forth. She takes on the questions. If she can't answer them, they go to Anthony or they come to me in some way. If there's something really challenging or something didn't go the right way, then that stuff ends up on my desk and I solve it. So communication, emails, they're like that. It doesn't take long to communicate, but sometimes, some
Unless you
days...
send me an email.
Pardon me?
Unless you send me an email.
Well, that's like, I might as well send it to the floor. Scott's a very busy man. We'll just leave it at that. But communication is critical in any business, otherwise the business is going to fail. And we feel very strongly about being very quick on that stuff. Even myself, I have a cell phone, I got email, I respond back usually the same day.
Guys, there must
Wait, Dolph might want to add on. Dolph?
Well, if you want me to give my opinion on that, not that I'd normally volunteer to give it, but communication can be tough. You see, if I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, it gets a while for me to get back into communication with what you're sending me. And if I'm on a cruise boat, for instance, then they're often out of range except for cell. So it depends on how close you are to a communication entity. I twist around. I take what you're saying. I'm being facetious a little bit here. The communication flow should be limited by you, the investor's ability to stay in touch with them, because you're doing wildly exciting things, because you don't have a job, because you don't need a job, because you've invested well. You follow what I'm saying? And if you think that sounds too highfalutin, you can achieve that, folks. You just need to take action. It's what IJ said this morning. He is different. Why? He's self-confessed. He doesn't think, I think he is, but he doesn't think he's smarter than most, whatever. He just takes massive action. And that's what it's all about.
Well done, Dolph.
Good team.
And I think, Dolph, to add to that, once you start earning foreign currency, it just takes that whole aspect that you've just said to another level, because suddenly lifestyle just opens up all over the world. Are there any more questions? Yep. Okay, guys, if you could just write them down for me, it makes it a little bit easier. I do battle to read, so I'll ask someone to help me. But more info on the 7% interest rate and 30-year amortization, that's for RJ. Just before he answers that, I will say one thing, that as he said, it is being tested, and it is something that we'd like to roll out, even in collaboration, because there is a barrier to entry that he's about to mention.
Yeah, real simple. We're talking about the largest hedge funds in the country. They found a gap in the market which has been absent since the recovery, so to speak. It's very difficult for Americans to get mortgages. We've changed our guidelines in our country, and investors have really been closed out, particularly international investors. So these guys, being very smart, they have so much money, they can't just buy houses with them and get a return. It's different. If you got $1 million to get a 10% return, that's one thing. You got 20 billion, 50 billion, it's a lot different to get those kinds of returns. So they have to put their money out in many different ways to have it earning a return. So they found this gap and they're making money available to investors. It's got to be a minimum of $500,000. They're saying that the loan to value is going to be 50 to 60%. That gives them a little wiggle room. In our first transaction that we're doing, it's 60% loan to value. So that means they've got to own about $833,000 so that they have a $500,000 minimum. They're offering a 30-year term, which is fantastic, and a 10-year call. Not bad. This market's going to continue to move in the right direction, I believe, for a few, I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think we have a lot of time for recovery in the next 10 years. That money, we need to put we have the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, right now. I want to really see how the paperwork comes out and if they really deliver what they said, because they've changed their platform every other hour. And really, they finally distilled it down. I met with the president of the company in Dallas about a month ago, and they really want to serve the investors that are out there because they see this tremendous ability to put money out there. And it's really inexpensive money, about 1.5 points, some other fees. It's not bad. It's much better than anything else that we've seen out there.
I think the bottom line is, guys, come back to interest being aligned. If we were just in the game of trying to sell you a house, do you think we would care whether we would get you better financing a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years? That's not us. As someone alluded to earlier, Zig Ziglar, right down this morning, the entire basis upon which IPS was built was that if we can help enough other people get what they want, we can have anything we want. And obviously, collectively, we start going to banks. If I've got one house, I'm not really important. But if I come with 100 other investors and we've got 100 houses, the rules of the game change. So we're always evolving, and pretty much it's always adapting and it's changing. When someone came up and they said, "Yeah, but I got the private financing at 12%. Now there's something else coming." I'm like, well, I should hope so. You know, we're just going to keep betting and evolving and everything else in terms of where we are. Dolph, there was a question here. Please take us through the 12% increase on rent. Is this 12% on improvement? I'm not exactly sure, but that's what it says here. Is that?
We're chatting about the commercial property that you built a wall, and then there was you did a 12% increase on the rent. And was that the 12% on the improvement? I was trying to understand.
Oh, that front wall of the building, the glass wall. Yeah, they would pay 12% of the capital value that I spended to put in whatever they wanted. So it cost $100,000 to put in the wall. They agreed to pay an extra $12,000 in rent a year. Why would they pay the $12,000 every year instead of the $100,000 one-off? They might be wanting to sell the business the next month and they want to sell it with this glass wall in place. Maybe they can't afford the $100,000 one-off, but they can absolutely afford the extra $12,000 a year based on the extra revenue they get from having the glass wall in place, more clients, all that sort of thing.
And you put that in your contract right up front, that any improvements that you do, you charge.
Correct, that's in the lease document. It's called the landlord improvement percentage. You know, the tenant agrees to pay X percent. And it varies as interest rates come down. Nowadays we have a much lower percentage, but then money costs me a lot less in the States anyway. Isn't it great, by the way, that you can fix your rate for 30 years and get a 30-year loan? In the States you can get 40-year loans. And the interest rate is fixed for the duration of the loan. And the loan can be assumable. You know, whereas in most countries, you're lucky to get 3, if you're really lucky, 5 years at a fixed rate, and then it goes floating. And you never know what you're going to have in the form of an investment in 6 or 7 years' time. But in the States, you know, sort of another layer of why it's so good there.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, please do. Yeah,
That's what part of the bubble was in the United States, was what they had these adjustable rates and they were very egregious. And what they would do is they would qualify people based on the lower interest rate, and as soon as it popped up, they couldn't afford it. Now, when you apply for a loan in the United States, and it's very egregious if you're a mortgage broker, because the people have to qualify if it goes to the highest rate if it's an adjustable rate. And there's so much paperwork that they've made mortgage brokers like the policemen of the mortgage industry when they're serving their clients, and many people have left the business for that reason.
Which is why if you had crowdfunding with a portal and a bunch of people doing it together, it makes it that much easier for you.
Well, just one more point on that. The wise use of leverage will enhance your return significantly, but where you have to be careful, there's many places that you have to be careful. Well, one place is where you see these ghetto properties and you're looking at these ridiculous rates of return and you're financing them because it's not a sustainable issue. The other thing is where are you in the season of your life? If you're young, you want as much leverage as you possibly can. As you get a little bit older like me, you might not want any leverage at all. You know, because you just want to be safe. Hey, I'm here, I'm there, I made it, I just want to be safe.
Ajay, in terms of maintenance and repairs, do you obtain 3 comparable quotes or do you use in-house contractors?
Absolutely not. We've got 14 crews out there. We know who does what and what pricing that we got. And if there's a repair that's over $500, you'll get an email. If it's less than that, we're just going to take care of it. If it's an emergency, we'll send you an email. But if there's an emergency and somebody's air conditioning goes down and it's 100 degrees, we have to act. And we are simply going to act. If it's in the wintertime and the heat goes out and the furnace is broken, whatever it is, you could be under a home warranty, in which case it's on me. But if it's not, we've got to do what's got to be done. And in every case like that, believe it or not, that stuff comes to me. Hey, what should we do in this situation? And I'm going to do whatever is the most common sense thing to do that I would do in my own portfolio. And you want us to do that. You don't want to be bothered. You're a passive investor. But things do go wrong. And part of the problem that we had maybe a year ago, and maybe even a little bit at the end of last year, coming into this year, was Anthony was too busy to get back with people. And that has been resolved. You have no idea what a stickler I am on that stuff because it's all about communication. It's from the top down.
Ajay, what's the difference between the benefits of renting out a house on lease option versus no lease option?
It's significant. Number one, we use an option. Okay, so the people they have an option to buy. It's separate to their lease, but in the option, it ties together all the terms and conditions of the lease. So if they violate anything in the lease, they violate the option. But the real point, there's a couple of very important points here, and it's psychological. First of all, the option is not refundable. It's also not reportable up for income taxes until it's exercised or it ends. Okay, so that's good. A security deposit, you always have to get back, and we never want to get in the middle of that stuff. So you guys get the option money up front when we have a client that goes into those houses. You never have to give it back. I think that's pretty important. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is we want that tenant to think that they're going to own this house. Okay, everything we do is on a 3-year lease. The most expensive cost of real estate is turnover. We try to eliminate that cost as much as possible because we want you guys to make as much money as possible. That's why there's no markup on repairs ever. But the idea that tenants think they're going to own it, hopefully we got somebody that's in the right area. If they say they want to rent a house for a year, hey, listen, we don't rent houses for a year. We want people that want to become homeowners. But we don't think that many of them will ever become homeowners. We've had 2 in the last 5 years that actually became homeowners. One of them was in one of my houses. Didn't really want to sell it, but they were qualified. We were happy to help them along their way, and we just moved our money into something else.
Statistically, it's 2% of homes where there's a lease option where they exercise the option.
And I think also what's quite interesting is normally you get a deposit on management that then gets given to the management company and ultimately it gets refunded at the end. Here, the lease option, it's a payment up front, it's yours. So it's immediate, it's like a 13-month check up front. So it does make quite a big difference. Joseph, you've spoken so much that no one else has had a word or got a word in edgeways here. But
I've got a question for Joseph.
okay.
What would you ask RJ if you had a question for him?
Please can you elaborate on the Securities Exchange Commission Regulation D and the need for accredited investors? Why did it take me as a United States citizen whose family owns 6 banks in November 2013 to open a new bank account, and it took 6 minutes on the internet?
Excellent. Let me clarify. The family owns 3 banks, and it took me 6 weeks to open a brokerage account, and it took 6 minutes on the internet, so I want to understand the difference.
So there's 2 questions. The first question has to do with the Regulation D in the United States and what's an accredited investor and all of that. I'll just address that real quickly because it's important. And then the second is why did it take so long to set up the brokerage account at the bank versus doing it in 6 minutes online? Okay, so I'm going to answer the second one first because it's a lot easier for me to answer. Because right now, the new technology is causing massive disruptions to the existing infrastructure in the financial service sector. And there are early adopters in that sector that are willing to take calculated risks to deliver product and services to market that many of the other traditional providers can't do because of their organizational infrastructure and self-perceived risk portfolio. So the reason that we're able to do that real quickly is because that the bank, even though it's an FDIC insured bank, it was a small little bank where we could meet with all 4 decision makers at once. Where if I try to get Wells Fargo to do anything, it will be speedy if I can get them meeting with the right person in 3 years. And then it'll go to attorneys who will say we can't do it and blah, blah, blah. So we have a window here of opportunity for those of us that aren't the traditional big players to move in and grab market share as those big players try to move their ship around to respond to the changing market.
A bit like the railroads 100 years ago. I would add to that one last thing. In life, if you know the right people, you get things done quickly. That's it.
So real quickly, I'm going to do this really fast, but securities laws around the world say who can invest in what type of things, and all securities have to be registered. The king in 1621 said, if you're going to sell a security, you need to register with me. But the process of registering means that you are becoming a public company. I'm publicly disclosing my shares and I'm going to be on the market. But a lot of people don't want to be a public company. They want to stay a private company, so they file for an exemption. And when you hear U.S. securities people start throwing out the numbers of a Reg D or a Reg S or a Reg A or a 506 this or a 506 that, what they're referring to are exemptions a private company can use to not have to file on the NASDAQ or on the New York Stock Exchange and become a public company. So they're able to stay private and still sell a security. With each of those exemptions that they choose, there's different rules associated with who they can sell to, when they can sell, how they can sell. And that's what the Jobs Act did that was so instrumental. It created 3 new exemptions that changed the rules. So the old Reg D offering had a 506A and a 506B, and now Reg D has a 506C. And I think of 506C, the C standing for community. Okay, so the 506C allows me to talk directly to the community about my offering. The cost that I pay as a business owner of using a 506C is that 100% of the investors who actually invest in the company have to be verified accredited investors. So the accredited investor status in the United States is a net worth of $2 million. And there's a couple other little clauses in there, and certain people can be exempt, and you can get your RIA license and be automatically accredited from a professional standing. There's ways around the money, okay? But that's a accredited investor status. So it used to be in a 506A and a 506B that all I had to do was self-represent and warrant to the business that I was accredited. It was called rep and warrant. And we've all seen those little forms. Yes, I am. Click yes, sign. And now you have to verify it in order to participate in the 506C. And verified accreditation means you're a lawyer, your accountant, or your broker's RIA is willing to put on a piece of letterhead that says, yep, they're an accredited investor.
Guys, just very quickly, sorry to butt in there, Joseph. I got $100 here for the first person that could come up and in 5 minutes just explain one word of what Joseph just said.
What he basically said was, in the original days, a person needed at least $1 million US or $200,000 year over year with the Securities Exchange Commission Regulation D. What he's saying now is that October, as he mentioned in the side note earlier, that in October, according to the United States law, which I personally am going to go kick and feel and touch and feel, and I think everybody else should too as well, that according to this 506C as in Charlie, it is now open to crowdfunding. If that's the case, he's right. Earth's shattering, and I got $100.
So well done. I love the action. I must admit, Dolph, you've taught them at least to take action. But I will say one thing. Henny and I tried to work that stuff out for 6 years, and you must understand, kind of with my ADHD, and I'm sitting there, I can see RJ was nearly falling asleep there. And you know, I heard Joseph talking. I was like, dude, you understand it? Cool, you are partner, done. You know, so for me, guys, there's a lot of questions here, and I just want to make sure we try and get through some of the essential ones. Someone asked here, will the opportunity be available on Thursday or Friday? It'll be available on Thursday and Friday in 4 years' time. The point being is that this is something that's growing, evolving. If it's not right for you now, it might be right for you in the future. It doesn't make any difference. But you've come here and you've got the education. Someone has said, what is the relationship with Forex Bank? What is their contact for reference in terms of the Forex Bank?
So you can always email me any of that. They're technically an FDIC insured bank. Your bank account is insured by the federal government. There's a link that says BankBox, and you can click the link for bankbox.com. They're our registration partner that has the registry access to the bank. It also gives you the complete address and phone number of the bank. You can go and look at them, and there's disclosures about the bank as well. And we can talk into all that geek level talk if you want directly.
Cool. Dolph, which are your 2 best books in residential to buy?
Listen, I could be polite and just say it's book this one and another book. My real answer is, if you want to buy real estate, you want to make 100 Rand or 100 million Rand. And if you're not interested in making the bigger number, then what are you doing here? And if you want to make, 100 million or 10 million Rand or whatever, what are you doing limiting yourself to 300 Rand worth of books? You should go to the library if you can't afford them and read 10 books a month. Not just my books, everyone's books on real estate, because you'll never learn less. Right, so I don't know why anyone would want to just buy 2 books, because you can't get everything down in 2 books. Now, give that some perspective. You heard I spent 8 years at university doing a PhD in electrical engineering, not the easiest course around. And everything I've learned, everything has been made redundant by new technology. And yet what you learned 10, 20, 30, for the older ones amongst you, 40, 50, 60 years ago, in real estate still applies. Equity is still equity and collateral is still collateral. And if you don't know the difference, you better find out. But once you know it, you'll never forget it. So it's so easy. You know, it took 8 years to do this PhD. I think in 8 weeks you can learn 90% of all you ever need to know in real estate to do fabulously well. You also get education junkies. People who go to event after event after event thinking, I just need a bit more information. I don't quite understand this yet. I don't understand that. Now I don't understand crowdfunding. And that's my excuse not to take action today, because I've got to understand it before I take action. And you'll never do anything. I mean, enjoy the coffee and the tea, because that's all you'll remember of it after a while.
I always used to say to people, no one's ever learned to swim by reading a book.
That's right.
You know, so, but I think just quickly, I'll answer this because it's easy. Can you give us details of your fee structure? There are no fees. That's it. Full stop. So you want to go on the website, you've got transparency, take a look, and you can see exactly how it works. Someone said, can you give, so sorry, there's no 2% up front, there's no 2% in the middle, there's no purchase fee, there's no finance fee, there's no real estate fee, there's no blah, 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 blah. There's no fees. My dollar's sitting right next to your dollar and is treated in exactly the same way. Can you give us a brief overview of what setting up and maintaining a company in the USA involves? Long story short, it's about 20,000 Rand, $2,000. We set you up with an LLC. We get you a bank account in the name of the LLC. You get generally 2 members or 2 shareholders, to use South African terminology, and you get a tax number for the LLC and you get a tax number for the 2 individuals. Someone also asked a question here. Ongoing, it's going to cost you between $1,000 and $1,500 a year, and that includes everything, including your auditing and everything. We've got that full process looked after. But the one thing that is important, someone else asked, should you buy in your own name or should you buy in an LLC? If you're told by someone in South Africa to buy in your own name, they're cheating you. There's 3 different ways and 3 different reasons, and to be fair, I learned this off Dolph when we were there in 2012. But the number one thing is that it's better protection, you've got better tax, and then the other thing is us as South Africans without a social security number can never ever get a credit rating in our own name. Unless you physically move to America, you can never get a credit rating. So everything we've been talking about, leverage and everything else, it's a waste of time. But your LLC, you can build credit in your LLC. And that's how we're getting access to credit. And so for me, you know, someone in America might have a different reason, but for us as foreigners, it's a non-negotiable. I don't know if there's anything I've missed out that you want to add to that.
Oh, no, it's so true. There's only one entity worse than buying in your own name, and that's buying with someone else as tenants in common, because now you're jointly and severally responsible for each other's debts and shortcomings. So buy it in an LLC, it gives you so many options. You can sell the property, or you can sell the LLC that owns the property, with different capital gains tax implications depending on which jurisdiction you're from and where you're investing in and all that. So it just gives you more options. It's very smart. And also, from a US perspective, you now look like a domestic entity because you're a domestic LLC in their eyes.
Interesting enough, Michael, and I still needs to be verified, but he owns a number of properties now in his LLC and just got told that getting residency and stuff is anyway, he's checking it out. But because he's been investing there and creating jobs and everything, traditionally in buying RJ's houses. So that still needs to be understood better. Now, Henny actually is just behind that counter there. And he said, where can I get more information about investing in the medical properties he's doing locally? Can anyone answer that question?
On the site.
Exactly. Register on the website, and when it's gone through the due diligence process and it's ready, it'll be up there. And ultimately, you'll be given access to it. Is it legal for foreigners to own property in America? Yes. You know what the greatest thing about America is it's pro-business. They don't care whether you're black, white, blue, green, or anything else for that matter. All they're interested in is whether you come there, whether you do what you say you're going to do, and whether you work hard. Am I right or wrong, RJ, specifically? And that's it's amazing doing business there. I mean, properties transfer in 4 days. You can actually set up an LLC in less than 24 hours. Imagine working in an environment where things were actually pro-business. As Clem Santos says, in America they roll out the red carpet for entrepreneurs. In South Africa they roll out the red tape for entrepreneurs. If I pay tax on the rental revenue in the USA, will I be taxed in South Africa? Do I need to disclose to SARS? That gets very complicated, and I don't think any of us are tax experts. So the purpose is not to stand here and try and tell you what to do or what not to do. But there is a dual tax agreement between the two. The most important thing is what Dolph actually showed you in terms of the depreciation and everything. Because if you want to declare it to SARS, and you do declare it to SARS, but there's no actual income because of the depreciation, etc., then it's reflected on. But I would suggest there, we've spent 280,000 Rand with Grant Thornton, top 5 accounting firm in the world, getting a tax opinion. And the one thing with tax is you cannot stand on stage and talk to 200 people and give them tax advice. It doesn't work like that. It's individual to you. Do we have the right partners? Yes. But ultimately that becomes your own discussion. Okay, Dolph, I know this one's quite a long one, so I'm pretty much almost hesitant to ask it, but someone at the back just asked about tax liens. I know it's quite a unique way of getting involved in terms of property. I know you spoke about it when you were last in South Africa, but if you could just give them the 2-minute version on the tax liens.
I'll try to keep it short. A tax lien is where you as the property owner owe property taxes to the council or the county. So that's like your rates. And let's say you haven't paid them, so you're $3,000 behind in your property taxes. The council will then run a sale and they'll say, who wants to pay this guy's property taxes on his behalf? And if you volunteer to do that, then you pay the $3,000, but you get a tax lien, which is something that goes on the title. It has higher priority than the first mortgage. So by law, the councils can put a lien on this property that ranks higher than the first mortgage. And the property owner has a redemption period. Typically it's 18 months, not always, 18 months to pay you back plus 18% interest. Right, so they have the option, they can pay you back the money you put in plus 18%, failing which you get the property. Now, most counties run these on the first Tuesday of every month. I'll sometimes fly up to Vegas because there's only 37 minutes flying time, and we'll try and pick up 3 or 4 of these because at worst, you get your money back plus 18%, and at best, you get the house. And it varies around the country. Texas is a bit different. Texas is always wild territory. There, the redemption period is only 6 months, and the interest rate is 25%. And if they don't pay you back within 6 months plus 25%, not only do you get the house, but the mortgage is wiped. Is that good or bad? Well, it depends if you're the bank or not. But the bank knows this, so they tend to go to the auctions and bid on their own properties because they'd rather, etc., etc. So, but it's a very interesting market. There are people who just work the tax lien market, and it can be very lucrative. But I like sitting back and not having to worry about what do I need to do. It's the first Tuesday of the month. I better work again. So I like buying things for the long term and never selling. So, but it's a good sideline to get into.
Again, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, the choices are you can try and work it all out yourself, or you can work with people. We had a fascinating guy, Dolph, I wish you had met him down in Cape Town. We got him on tape so people will be able to see him next week. And he read your book. He went to America. It took him 2 years to work out how to open a bank account and an LLC and everything else. And after $5,000 later, he just gave up because it all sounded too good and going to see a estate agent, and I think the estate agent died or something, and he just gave up. He met us, and within 3 weeks, he owned a property in Atlanta through RJ. So, you know, that's just the difference between the two, basically.
Can I add on to that? Of course. Tax liens are, just like houses, are extremely competitive, and it changes from state to state. In Georgia, it's a 20% interest, and the homeowner has a year to redeem it. But it's extremely competitive, and it's competitive in every state. And there's companies that are, I know there's a big one out of Chicago that buys as many tax liens as they can, and they bid down the interest rates in some of these areas, and you could end up with interest rates of 2 or 3 or 4%, hoping that you're going to get the property. There's other strategies there, and the key is to buy tax liens on properties where the people are dead, or there's nobody there, and nobody's going to redeem it, or you find the family members and you get them to sign off on it. But it can be very, very lucrative. We don't do it. We could do it, we just don't have enough time to do it.
It's very true what AJ says. Many states, they bid it down. It's like a Dutch auction where it goes down and down. It becomes to the point where it's not worthwhile. But Nevada, where I do most of mine, it's a gambling state. And they have a lottery wheel that they spin around. You usually get a paddle with a number on it. And they spin the wheel and number 37. Who's that? Me! You know, do you want to buy this house? Yes, I'll take it. It just becomes crazy. And you compare that. Hey, just very briefly. I'll speak very fast because some of you are fast and we'll keep it going. There are 128,000 hotel rooms in Las Vegas, average occupancy about 1.6 people per room. That means 200,000 people can be fit on the strip. I often go there to buy houses and it is full. You can't get a room. That means 200,000 people are there. Most of them are there to gamble. Your chances of striking the jackpot, are you still with me? 1 in 16 million. If you don't win the jackpot, do the casinos give you your gambling money back? Of course not. Do they give you interest on your money? 200,000 people try every night for one chance in 16 million of hitting the jackpot. If not, you don't get your money back, you don't get interest. These tax lien certificates I told you are held on the first Tuesday of every month. It's once a month. Guess how many people turn up? Between 50 and 100. For a guaranteed return of your capital plus 18% interest, failing which you get the house. This is the madness of the masses. The masses go to the casinos because, ooh, you get free drinks. And there are cocktail waitresses who lean over the gambling table offering you your drinks while you're losing track of what your counting system was. And the masses do that, while the smart people who only number between 50 and 100 go for this guaranteed return. Making money is easy if you change your mindset.
I mean, on that note, it's fantastic. You know, it's it couldn't have been a better lead-in, because I guarantee you there's people in the room thinking it sounds too good to be true. And you know, people are like, well, how do we benefit and everything else? There's two ways we benefit. By putting my dollars next to your dollars, we have more buying power. It's that simple. The second way we benefit is that we give you a target return, and once we've achieved that target return, and it's different on different projects, we then earn a performance. We effectively get a, you know, so basically, let's say, for example, the target return is 11%, and we end up getting 20%. Then we would split that with you. You would get 16.5, and we would get 4.5. It's that simple. It's clean, it's transparent. Someone else said, how do you determine the value of the number of units in Wealth Migrate? Guys, this is not Blue Zone. We're not buying a piece of land for R1 million, selling it, putting it in a company and selling it to you for 100 million. I'm putting my money right next to yours, and I'm treated in exactly the same way. Most importantly, we got all the due diligence, we got all the valuations, got all the inspection reports, whatever you want is there. Because trust and transparency and our interests being aligned are the only three things that are going to guarantee in the future that we work together. And does the investment committee retain shares in the investment? Only if we invest our own money. That's it.